It was a chilly Monday morning in the quiet town of Brooksville. A small public middle school stood still in the early light. Its walls painted dull beige, with a cracked sidewalk leading to the front entrance. Inside, the students slowly dragged, their feet to class, yawning, whispering, pushing, and laughing. In classroom 6B, a sign read, "Career Day, share what your parents do." The walls were decorated with paper drawings of firemen, chefs, pilots, and nurses, all made by the kids. Malik Carter sat in the second row from the back. He didn't talk much. He never did. He wore a faded hoodie, baggy jeans, and old sneakers that had once been white. His skin was deep brown, his eyes thoughtful. He looked like he was always thinking about something far away. His desk had a crack running through the wood, and he carried a backpack with one broken strap. It was covered in worn-out military stickers. One of them read, "Pentagon Security." But half of it was peeled off. Ms. Sanders, the teacher, stood at the front of the class. She was in her early 40s, with short blonde hair and thick glasses that always slid down her nose. She clapped her hands loudly. "Okay, class, let's get started," she said with a bright voice. "Today is very special. You all had a weekend to think about what your parents do for work. And now, you get to share it with us. Don't be shy." Some students giggled, others rolled their eyes, most were excited. A girl named Julia raised her hand first. "Yes, Julia." Miss Sanders smiled. Julia stood up proudly. "My mom is a nurse," she said. "She helps people in the hospital and gives medicine." The class clapped. Miss Sanders beamed. "Very good. Thank her for her service." Next was Ben. "My dad owns a bakery," Ben said. "He lets me eat chocolate muffins for breakfast sometimes." Laughter. Then came Lucy. "My mom is a lawyer. She helps people in court." "Wonderful," Miss Sanders said. "Now who's next?" One by one, students stood up, talked, laughed, and shared. Then Miss Sanders looked at the quiet boy in the second row. "Malik," she asked, "would you like to share what your parents do?" Malik hesitated. His eyes darted around the room. Everyone was looking at him now. He swallowed hard. His fingers gripped the edge of the desk. His voice was soft, almost unsure. "My mom, she works in a diner," he said quietly. "And your dad?" Miss Sanders asked, tilting her head. There was a long silence. The room felt still. Then Malik slowly stood up. He looked at no one. He stared at the chalkboard behind the teacher and said, "My dad works at the Pentagon." A heavy pause, then it started. First a snort from the back, then laughter. Loud rolling laughter. Even a few students slapped their desks. "Yeah, right," someone whispered. "Sure he does," another said under their breath. Ms. Sanders gave a small, tight smile. She placed her hand on her hip and chuckled slightly. "Oh, sweetheart," she said gently. "It's okay to dream, but let's keep it real, all right? No need to make things up just to sound impressive." More laughter. Malik's eyes dropped to the floor. His hands trembled slightly. He didn't say another word. He sat back down slowly. It's like someone lowering themselves into cold water. No one noticed the way his leg bounced nervously under the table. No one noticed the way he bit the inside of his cheek until it bled. Miss Sanders moved on quickly. "All right. Who's next?" she asked. Another kid stood up, but Malik was no longer listening. His eyes went to the window. Outside, it had started to drizzle. Raindrops slid down the glass slowly, like tears, from where he sat. He could just barely see the school parking lot. A black SUV had pulled up beside the building. It didn't look like the usual cars teachers drove. It was large, clean, and had dark-tinted windows. Malik stared at it. His backpack lay on the floor beside him. It's torn, with the corner of a military patch hanging loose by one thread. Nobody noticed it. Nobody cared. As the class moved on, Malik's mind drifted, he thought. About his dad, he remembered when he was 5 years old, sitting on his father's shoulders during a 4th of July parade. He remembered the strong arms that held him, the clean scent of his father's uniform, the way everyone moved out of the way when his dad walked past. But that was a long time ago. Now, his dad rarely came home. Sometimes months passed with only a single phone call. Sometimes there was no call at all. His mom never said much. When he asked, she'd just say, "He's doing work that keeps people safe. It's not always something you can talk about." But Malik remembered the time he saw his dad's ID card by mistake. It had the Pentagon symbol on it. His name, David L. Carter. Clearance level. Red Dot. Malik knew it was real. Just didn't know how to make anyone else believe it. The school bell rang loudly, snapping everyone back to reality. Kids grabbed their bags and rushed out, but Malik didn't move. He stayed sitting, silent, his eyes still on the window. Miss Sanders noticed Malik. She asked, gathering her papers, "It's time for lunch." "I'm waiting," he said quietly. "For what?" He didn't answer. She frowned but said nothing else. Students passed by him in the hallway, bumping his chair, laughing, chatting, throwing paper balls. But Malik didn't blink outside. The black SUV was still there. Then the driver's door opened. Out stepped a man, tall, broad shoulders, wearing a military uniform. But not just any uniform. This one had medals, ribbons, and a Pentagon security badge clipped to the chest. The rain hit his shoulders, but he didn't flinch. He looked straight at the school building, right toward the classroom window. Right at Malik. Malik stood up slowly. His face didn't show fear or even surprise. It showed something else, something deep, like he had waited a long time for this. The man outside started walking forward, calm and steady, toward the entrance. Inside the classroom, Malik reached for his backpack, slung it over his shoulder. I walked out without saying a word. Ms. Sanders barely noticed it till she looked out the window and froze. The school hallway was loud and crowded after lunch. Students moved quickly, talking, laughing, shoving each other playfully. But even in all the noise, Malik walked alone. He kept his head low. His backpack bounced behind him with every step. A small tear near the zipper had grown bigger. Still, he didn't care. In the teacher's lounge, two women stood near the coffee machine. One of them was Ms. Green, the music teacher. The other was Mr. Owens, the gym coach. Both had taught Malik before. Ms. Green whispered, "Did you hear what Malik said this morning? That his dad works at the Pentagon?" Mr. Owens laughed, nearly spilling his coffee. He said that again. "I remember when he told me his dad trained spies," he chuckled. "Last year, it was top secret missions. Kids got an imagination." Ms. Green rolled her eyes. "He lies to get attention. Poor kid. But still, someone needs to talk to him." They didn't know Malik was right outside the door, frozen in place. He heard every word. Back in class, Malik sat silently at his desk. His mind was somewhere else. He could still hear the students laughing at him. It's the way Miss Sanders looked at him when he spoke, like he was a child lost in dreams. "It's okay to dream, but don't make things up." Those words stuck in his head like glue. He clenched his fist under the table, his nails pressing into his skin. He wasn't lying. He had never lied about his dad. After school, Malik walked home alone. It was a quiet neighborhood. The houses were small and close together. Some had broken fences. Others had old cars parked out front. His building was gray and worn down, with rust around the mailboxes as he walked up the stairs. He passed Mrs. Booker, an old woman who lived 2 floors above him. She looked at him and shook her head. "Your daddy's in prison," she muttered. "Not the Pentagon." Malik stopped. He turned his head but didn't respond. He'd heard this before. Rumors, whispers. "Your dad ran out on your mom. He's in jail somewhere. He doesn't want you." All lies. But people believed him because they sounded easy. Truth was harder to believe. Inside his apartment, the air was heavy. His mom was working her second shift, so the place was quiet. He dropped his bag near the door and sat on the couch. In the corner of the living room stood a small wooden box with a rusty lock. It was old, scratched, and his mother always said, "Don't touch that." But Malik's eyes kept drifting toward it. He got up and walked over. He sat in front of the box, staring at it. Then he slowly reached out and touched the lock. It was cold. He tried to lift the lid. It didn't budge. He knew there were things inside. Things his mom never talked about. Military medals, photos, maybe letters, maybe even proof. Proof that his dad was real. Proof that he worked where he said he did. He looked toward the door. Still quiet, no one home. He tried the lock again, but it wouldn't open. Just then the door clicked. His mom walked in, tired, holding a grocery bag in one arm and her purse in the other. When she saw Malik near the box, she dropped the bag. "Malik," she shouted, "what are you doing?" He stood up quickly. "Nothing," he mumbled. "I told you never to touch that," she snapped. "I just wanted to know," Malik said, "about Dad, about everything." His mother's face changed. Not angry now, but scared. She walked over and closed the box. She didn't say anything for a moment. Then quietly she said, "That box is not for you." Malik looked her in the eyes. "Why not?" she sighed. "Because what's inside isn't safe." That night, Malik lay awake in bed. The room was dark, except for the moonlight coming through the window. His mind was racing. Why wouldn't his mom tell him the truth? Why did everyone think he was? Lying, he stared at the ceiling. Maybe they'll all stop laughing, ... If he shows up tomorrow, he whispered to himself. Then he rolled over and closed his eyes. He didn't sleep. The next morning at school, Miss Sanders made an announcement. "Tomorrow," she said, "we'll continue career day, but this time you can bring a parent to speak to the class. It'll be fun." She looked directly at Malik again. Some kids turned to him and giggled. "You gonna bring the president too?" "Oh," one boy whispered. "What about Spider-Man?" "Maybe your dad trained him," another joked. Malik stayed quiet. He didn't laugh. He didn't even blink. He just stared down at his notebook and started writing something with his pencils. Low. Neat letters, no one saw what he wrote. But later, when he folded the paper and slipped it into his pocket, he had a strange look on his face. Almost like he was sure of something. Outside, in the parking lot, that same black SUV rolled by again. It stopped near the edge of the school field. No one noticed, except Malik. He saw through the classroom window, and for the first time in days, he smiled. The final bell rang. Students rushed out of the classroom laughing and talking. Backpacks swung wildly. Feet pounded down the hallway. But Malik didn't run. He never did. He walked slowly, hands in his pockets, head low. As he passed Miss Sanders' desk, she looked up briefly, but said nothing. Neither did he. The building was noisy, but inside Malik's head, it was quiet. Outside the school, the sun was already beginning to set. The air was cooler now, and the sky was a soft orange. Kids climbed into waiting cars. Parents honked from the pickup lane. Malik stepped out of the school building and glanced around. The black SUV from earlier was gone. He didn't look surprised. He just walked. Malik's neighborhood, the streets of his neighborhood were narrow and filled with noise. A stray dog barked from behind a gate. Somewhere in the distance, someone played loud music. Trash bins stood crooked on the sidewalk. The walls of nearby buildings were cracked, some spray-painted with names and drawings. But Malik didn't seem to care. He had lived here his whole life. He walked past familiar faces. Some neighbors nodded. Others didn't even look up. He reached his building, a low gray apartment with rusted stairs and broken mailboxes. One of the doors hung slightly off its hinge. He climbed the stairs to the third floor, apartment 3B. Home inside the apartment, the door creaked as he opened it. The apartment was small. The living room had a brown couch with a tear in it. A tiny TV sat on a wobbly table. The kitchen had one flickering light bulb. On the wall, one photo hung, a faded picture of Malik. It's a baby in his mother's arms. No pictures of his father. Not a single one. He tossed his backpack onto the couch and went straight to the small refrigerator. Inside there was a half-full bottle of orange juice, 2 eggs, and leftover rice in a container. He grabbed the container and ate cold rice with a spoon. No complaints. No comments. This was normal. A quiet evening. Malik finished eating, then went to his room. It wasn't really a full room, just a small space with a mattress on the floor and a desk with missing drawers. He pulled out a notebook. The front said, My truth in bold letters. He flipped through the pages. Drawings of soldiers. Notes about secret missions. God. The word Pentagon written in different colors. He had filled the notebook with everything he remembered about his dad. As a colonel, one note said, he speaks different languages. He calls once every few months. He always says he's proud of me. Malik stared at the last line, then closed the notebook. His mother comes home a few hours later. The door opened. His mother entered slowly, her face tired, her clothes smelling like oil and fries from the diner where she worked. She dropped her purse on the chair and took off her shoes without saying a word. "Hi, Mom," Malik said softly. She looked at him, smiled weakly, and said, "Hey, baby, you eat?" He nodded. She walked to the sink, poured herself a glass of water, then sat beside him on the couch. They sat there for a while, quiet. The TV was off. The room was still. Then Malik spoke. "Career day is tomorrow." His mom turned slightly. "Yeah, they said we can bring a parent this time." She froze. "Can you call him?" Malik asked. "Can he come?" His mother looked at the floor, her eyes filled with something unreadable. Pain, fear, regret. "I don't know," she whispered. "But he promised," Malik said. "He would come next time." "I know," she said. "But it's not that simple." "Why not?" Malik asked. "Why won't you ever tell me what he really does?" She stayed quiet. "Is he really working for the Pentagon?" he asked. "Or is he really in prison?" Her head snapped up. "Who told you that?" "People talk," he said. "Even the neighbors, even the teachers. They all think I lie." Rubbed her hands together. "I don't care what they think," she said softly. "I care about you. That's why I protect you." "I don't need protecting," Malik whispered. "I just need the truth." She looked at him. Her eyes filled with tears, but she quickly wiped them away. "I'll see what I can do," she said. Later that night, Malik couldn't sleep. He stared at the ceiling. He imagined his father walking into the classroom. All the students going silent. Miss Sanders looking shocked. The truth finally being seen. He wanted it more than anything. But deep down, part of him was still scared. What if his father didn't come? What if everything people said was true? Turned over and buried his face into his pillow. Tomorrow would change everything one way or another the next morning. The apartment was silent. Sunlight peeked through the curtains. Shining gently on the wooden floor, Malik sat alone at the kitchen table. A bowl of dry cereal sat in front of him, untouched. He wasn't hungry. His thoughts were louder than his stomach. Today was the day, career day part 2. And he still didn't know if his dad would come. A quiet conversation. His mom came out of the bedroom, already dressed in her work clothes. Her black apron was tied around her waist, and her name tag hung loosely from her shirt. She poured herself a cup of coffee. The tension in the room was thick. Malik looked up and asked softly, "Did you talk to him?" She didn't answer at first. She just stared out the window then. Finally, she said, "He got the message." Malik's heart skipped. "So, is he coming?" Her lips tightened. "I don't know," she replied. With his job, nothing is promised. Malik looked down at his cereal again. She walked over and placed her hand on his shoulder. "I want you to be ready." "Just in case he doesn't," she said gently. "Okay." But Malik didn't respond, because deep inside, he was already preparing himself for the worst. The box in the corner after his mom left for work, Malik sat on the couch staring at the floor. Then slowly his eyes turned toward the old wooden box in the corner. The same box his mom had always told him to leave alone, but something inside him said today was different. He stood up, walked over to it, kneeled down. His hands trembled as he touched the rusty lock again. It still wouldn't open. He looked around, then went to his mother's room. He didn't want to snoop, but his heart was racing now. He checked her dresser drawers carefully, quickly, in the third drawer. Beneath a pile of folded scarves, he found a small key. It looked old and a bit bent, but it might fit. He rushed back to the box, slid the key into the lock. It clicked. His hands paused. This was it. Slowly, he opened the lid. What's inside the box? Inside the box was a stack of folders, medals, and old photographs. The first photo was of a man in full military uniform, tall, strong, wearing dark sunglasses, sharp jawline. A name tag on the chest, Carter. Malik's eyes widened. It was his dad. He had never seen this photo before. Beneath it was a silver medal with a red ribbon, shining despite the dust. Then, a folder. Top secret, eyes only, was written across the front. He opened it carefully. Inside were documents. Some were blacked out with thick ink. Others had government stamps and Pentagon symbols. Malik couldn't understand all the words. But one thing was clear. His dad really worked there. There was no lie, no fantasy, no... His heart pounded. At the bottom of the folder was something else, a letter. It was sealed in a plain envelope. On the front, in neat handwriting, it said, "For Malik, when the time is right." He opened it. The letter was short, but every word hit hard. "Malik, if you're reading this, it means you needed to. I'm sorry I couldn't always be there. My work is dangerous. But it's real, and so are you. You are stronger than they think. Let them laugh now. One day they'll know. I love you, Dad." Malik's eyes filled with tears. He wiped them quickly, then stood up taller than before. He put the letter in his backpack carefully, gently, then placed everything else back in the box. Locked it. Hid the key. He didn't need to show the whole world, but he needed that letter with him today, just in case. The decision. He looked at the clock. It was time to leave for school. He took one deep breath, zipped up his jacket, and walked out. The door, his face was calm now, focused, because today, he wouldn't wait by the window. Today he would walk into class, whether his father came or not. But deep down, still hoped that black SUV would show up. Malik walked to school with his hands deep in his jacket pockets. His backpack felt heavier than usual, but not because of books. Inside it, folded neatly, was the letter from his dad, the one he wasn't supposed to read yet. It felt like protection. Like armor, he kept walking, one foot after the other. Heart beating faster the closer he got to school. The whispers began as he walked through the school gate. Two boys leaned against the wall near the entrance. They saw him. Look who showed up. One of them whispered loud enough for Malik to hear. The other smirked. "Is today the day your secret agent dad comes flying in from space?" Malik didn't stop. He didn't even look at them. He just walked, straight ahead. But the words stayed in the air behind him like smoke. Inside the classroom in room 6B, students were already taking their seats. Some were excited. Others looked bored. Miss Sanders stood by the whiteboard, writing in big letters, "Career Day Guest Presentations." She turned to the class. "All right, students. Today's the big day. Your parents or guardians will be joining us soon to talk about what they do." Few hands shot up. "My dad brought donuts. My mom's coming in a nurse uniform. My uncle's a firefighter." Everyone laughed and cheered, except Malik. He sat quietly near the window, watching the front gates. Waiting, another Commente girl behind him leaned over and whispered, "Is your dad really coming? Or is he too busy saving the world?" Some students around her giggled. Malik stayed silent, but his fists tightened under the desk. He glanced at the window. Again, still nothing. Rumors in the hallway meanwhile. Outside the classroom, in the teacher's office, a few staff members stood by the coffee table. They didn't know. Malik's mom had already warned him about the rumors, but he had heard it before. One teacher said, "That Malik boy said his father works at the Pentagon, right?" Another replied, "Well, I heard his dad is actually in prison. Long gone, never came back." The first teacher raised an eyebrow. "Really? It's what people say?" They both shook their heads. "Poor kid," one of them said. "Always making up stories. Sad, really." A glimmer of hope back in class. Malik checked the clock. 10 minutes had passed. Students were already standing near the front with their parents. There was cheering, applause, stories about running businesses, saving lives, or fixing engines. And still, no one had come for Malik. His chair suddenly felt too small. His throat was dry. He reached into his backpack and touched the letter again. He didn't pull it out. just held it and repeated his dad's words silently. Let them laugh now. Day they'll know. Then it happened from the window. Something caught Malik's eye. A familiar shape. A black SUV. Pulling into the school parking lot slowly. Quietly. Students didn't notice it yet. Neither did Miss Sanders. But Malik saw it. His heart raced. He sat up straighter. The SUV door opened. Out stepped a man wearing military boots and a uniform. Inside the classroom, the noise was growing. More parents had arrived. Some wore business suits. Others came in work uniforms. One man even brought a toolbox to show the kids how he fixes cars. Everyone clapped and smiled. Ms. Sanders stood near the board. Looking proud, she glanced at the classroom door, waiting for the next parent. Then she looked at Malik still sitting quietly by the window. His chair hadn't moved. His name hadn't been called. A quick moment of doubt, Ms. Sanders walked over to his desk. She leaned down slightly and spoke softly, but with a sharp edge in her voice. Malik, you said your father works at the Pentagon. Where is he? Malik looked up at her, calm but firm. It's coming, he said. She nodded slowly. You know, there's no shame in being honest, Malik. If your father isn't coming, it's okay to tell the truth. Malik didn't answer. He looked back out the window. The black SUV was now parked just outside the school, but still no one else seemed to notice. The class joins Ina Boy in the front row raised his hand and said loudly, Miss, I think Malik just says stuff to get attention. Another student joined in. Yeah, last year he told me his dad trained FBI agents. The room chuckled. Malik clenched his fists in his lap but stayed silent. Ms. Sanders turned back to the class. Let's not make fun, okay? But honesty matters. We all want to feel proud of our families, but it's more important to be real. She looked at Malik again. You don't have to lie to impress anyone. Malik stands up. Malik stood up slowly. The room quieted for a moment. I didn't lie, he said calmly. He's coming. And when he does, I don't want any of you to clap. Just watch. The class stared at him. Some rolled their eyes. Others waited, but no one spoke. A strange energy then. They all heard it. The soft sound of boots walking down the hallway. Steady, strong Ms. Sanders turned her head toward the door. The students looked. Confused, the sound got closer. Thud, thud, thud. Then it stopped. Just outside the classroom. Door. The door handle turned. Someone was coming in. Ms. Sanders walked over to the door slowly. The students leaned forward in their chairs. Malik stayed perfectly still, eyes locked on the door. The handle turned, and then the door opened. The classroom went completely still. No one moved. No one spoke. Even the sound of the wall clock seemed to vanish. Standing in the doorway was a tall black man, broad shoulders, clean-shaven face, sharp eyes, and a chest full of ribbons and medals. His uniform was spotless. It's perfectly ironed and gleaming under the classroom lights. But what stood out most was the Pentagon badge clipped to his jacket. The room reacts, Miss. Sanders froze. She blinked several times as if she wasn't sure she was really seeing what stood before her. The students were stunned. Some whispered, "Whoa, is that? No way." Even the kids who had mocked Malik the most sat back in silence. He speaks. The man stepped forward slowly, his heavy boots thudding softly against the floor. He didn't smile. He didn't look around. He looked directly at Malik. "I'm here, son." His voice was deep, calm, unshakable. Malik finally stood up. From his seat, he didn't smile either. He just nodded once, then walked over to the man his father stood by his side. "Miss Sanders tries to speak, Miss." Sanders cleared her throat. "Hello, sir. And you are?" The man reached into his coat and handed her a card. She looked down. Her eyes widened. The card read, "Colonel David Carter, Intelligence Division." The Pentagon. Her lips parted. But no words came out. No applause, just respect there was. No clapping, no cheering, just silence. But not the kind of silence filled with doubt or judgment. This was respect. This was shock turning into realization. The same students who laughed just minutes ago now stared at the man in front of them like he was a general from a movie. Malik's eyes. Malik looked around the room. He didn't say anything. He didn't need to. His eyes said everything. You didn't believe me? You laughed at me, but I never lied. He looked back up at his father. For the first time in a long time, he felt proud in front of everyone. Colonel David Carter now stood at the front of the A classroom. The room was silent. Ms. Sanders stepped aside awkwardly, not knowing what to say. The students, all of them, stared in quiet disbelief. Every eye was on the man who just moments ago no one believed existed. He turned to face them. The father speaks. Good morning, class, Colonel Carter began. I don't usually speak in schools. I spend most of my time in places I'm not allowed to talk about. His voice was calm and powerful. But when my son told me his classmates didn't believe in him, I decided it was time to show up. His eyes moved across the room. Every student sat straighter in their seat. My name is Colonel David Carter. I've worked in counterintelligence for over 15 years. I've seen more than I wish I had. I've lost friends. I've protected lives. And every day, I fight too. Keep your world safe. He paused. But none of that means anything if my own son is called a liar in his classroom. The class responds. You could hear a pin drop. Some kids looked down at their desks. Others exchanged guilty glances. Even the loud ones had nothing to say now. One girl in the front whispered, I didn't know. Another boy muttered, he wasn't lying. Ms. Sanders tries to recover. Ms. Sanders forced a nervous smile. Well, thank you, Colonel Carter. We're honored to have you here today. Colonel Carter gave a respectful nod, but didn't smile. You should be. He turned to the board and erased career day guest presentations with one swipe of his hand, then picked up the whiteboard marker. He wrote only one word, respect. A lesson without saying much. He put the marker down. That's my job. That's his job. And it should be yours too. He walked over to Malik and placed a hand on his son's shoulder. Malik stood straight, unshaken, proud. One last look. Colonel Carter gave the room one final glance. I won't take more of your time. He turned to Malik. You ready to go, son? Malik looked to Miss Sanders. She nodded slowly, her face now pale. Yes, you're dismissed. Malik picked up his backpack. He didn't say anything. He didn't need to. As he walked out of the room with his father, every student turned their head to watch, and no one laughed. But no one said it to Malik's face. Not one apology. Not even from Miss Sanders, in the parking lot. When they reached the black SUV, Colonel Carter opened the passenger door. Malik climbed in slowly. Before closing the door, he turned and looked back. At the school building, his face wasn't angry, just finished. He had nothing left to prove. Inside the car, he drove in silence for a moment. Then Malik finally spoke. They won't say sorry, will they? His father kept his eyes on the road. They don't need to, he said. You already proved them wrong. Malik looked out the window, but it still hurts. His father nodded slowly. It's supposed to. Another pause. But don't let their silence shape your voice. Back at schooling room 6B, students went back to their work. But everything felt different now. Some kids scribbled in notebooks without looking up. Others stared at their shoes. Julia, one of the girls who had laughed the loudest, raised her hand. Should we write apology letters to Malik? Miss Sanders looked uncomfortable. She hesitated. I don't. I think that's not necessary. Let's just all learn from this and move on. But even she knew something important had just happened, and they couldn't unsee it. While the class tried to act normal again, whispers continued across the school. By lunch break, nearly every student in the building had heard about what happened in room 6B. Malik's dad is from the Pentagon. He walked in like a movie scene. The teacher looked like she saw a ghost. But no one had the full truth, and there was someone else who had heard the story. Right. The school principal, the principal's office, Mr. Hanley, the principal was. An older man with silver hair and strict eyes. He believed in discipline, honesty, keeping peace in the school. As he sat behind his large wooden desk, the phone rang. He answered. Yes. The voice on the other end was quiet, serious. Sir, this is the front desk. There was a man here earlier today. Said he was Malik Carter's father. Military uniform. He gave us a card from the Pentagon. Mr. Hanley sat up straighter. And I checked it. It's real. He's on a classified clearance list. Level 6. The principal's eyes narrowed. He hung up the phone and stood slowly from his chair. So it's true, he whispered to himself. A visit to the classroom, eh? A few minutes later, he knocked on the door of room 6B. Ms. Sanders looked up, startled. Mr. Hanley, sir? Is everything okay? He entered quietly, eyes scanning the students. I'd like to speak with you privately. The student sat up, alert. Ms. Sanders stepped into the hallway with him. Is this about Malik? Mr. Hanley nodded. The man who visited your class today. That was Colonel David Carter. His ID is confirmed. He works directly with the Pentagon's intelligence division. Ms. Sanders blinked. I thought the boy was exaggerating. We're wrong, Mr. Hanley said firmly. So was everyone else. She looked down, ashamed. An unexpected file, then Mr. Hanley handed her a file. This was sent to the school 5 years ago. You never saw it because Malik was in another teacher's class at the time. She opened it. Inside was Malik's school registration, along with a note from a military contact. This child may experience isolation due to his father's classified role. Please treat any of his statements with care and avoid public correction. Contact the defense liaison if questions arise. Miss Sanders read the letter slowly. Her face turned pale. I didn't know, but you should have asked, Mr. Hanley replied. Back at Malik's apartment, meanwhile, Malik sat in the apartment with his dad, eating noodles at the small table. The TV was on. The volume was low. His dad finally broke the silence. You know, son, the truth doesn't always change people's minds, but it always sets you free. Malik nodded. He still didn't apologize. That's not your burden. You did your part. Malik looked down at the table. They'll forget about it soon. Because his father shook his head. They won't, because now they know who you are. After Principal Hanley left the classroom, Miss Sanders stood still for a long time. The file in her hand, the one stamped with Pentagon clearance, felt heavier than paper. She sat down at her desk. The laughter and noise from earlier echoing in her memory. Sweetheart, it's okay to dream. You don't have to lie to impress us. She had said those things. Now she knew the truth, and she couldn't take her words back. The classroom feels different. The students didn't say much either. They had watched Colonel Carter walk in like something from a movie. He didn't yell, didn't brag, didn't prove anyone wrong with anger. He simply stood there with truth written all over his uniform. And now, they didn't know how to act. After school, Miss Sanders waits. When the final bell rang, students rushed. Out like usual, but Miss Sanders didn't pack her things. She sat at her desk, watching the door, hoping, waiting, and then she saw him. Malik. He walked slowly, the last to leave, just like always. She stood up. Malik, can I speak with you for a moment? He stopped in the doorway. Didn't come in, didn't smile. Just looked at her. The attempted apology, miss. Sanders took a step closer. Listen, about what I said yesterday, and before that, I was wrong. Malik didn't answer. She continued. You didn't lie. I shouldn't have doubted you. Still, Malik stayed quiet. I judged you based on your clothes, your silence. Your neighborhood? Her voice cracked. But none of that matters. You were telling the truth all along. She looked down, then back up again. I'm sorry. Malik's response. Malik didn't step inside the classroom. He just said softly, You didn't believe me because of what I looked like. Miss Sanders nodded slowly. Yes. Malik's face was calm. But I forgive you. Then he turned and walked away. Ms. Sanders is changed as. He disappeared down the hall. Ms. Sanders sat back down at her desk. This time, she didn't feel like the teacher. She felt like the student. She opened her lesson planner, and on a blank page, she wrote one word in big letters: listen. Because sometimes, the quietest kids hold the loudest truths. Later that evening, Malik sat at the kitchen table, his school bag beside him, the lights dimmed low. His mother had returned home from work. She was tired, her hair pulled back, and her uniform stained with oil from the diner. But something about tonight felt different. Malik wasn't quiet. He was thinking. His mother notices you're still dressed. She said, "No cartoons? No drawing?" Malik looked up. "He came today," he said softly. She froze. "Your dad?" Malik nodded. In full uniform, in front of everyone. Her hand slowly covered her mouth. "He really came. He told them everything." Without telling them everything, she sat beside him. "And your teacher?" Malik looked away. She said, "Sorry, but not because someone made her. Because she knew she was wrong." My mother touched his shoulder gently. "I'm proud of you." The letter revisited that night, in his small room. Malik took out the letter again, the one his father wrote. "Let them laugh now. One day they'll know." He stared at those words, now burned into his heart. He folded the letter carefully and slid it into the back pocket of his notebook. But just as he was about to turn off the light, the house phone rang. A mysterious call. His mother rushed to pick it up. They rarely got calls this late. "Hello?" Her face changed from tired, to confused, to slightly alarmed. "Yes, he's here. One moment." She handed the phone to Malik. It's for you." Malik took the phone slowly. "Hello?" a deep voice answered. "Malik Carter?" "Yes, this is Sergeant Daniels, Department of Youth. Intelligence Development. Your father forwarded your name to us. He told us you may be ready." Malik blinked. "Ready for what?" The voice paused. "For a different kind of future. One not many get to see. We're inviting you to Washington this summer for 3 days inside the Pentagon." Malik can't believe I'd sat in total silence. His heart beat like a drum. "Are you serious?" "This isn't a prank, son. You've already been cleared. Your father made the request himself." Malik swallowed hard. His voice cracked. "Yes, I want to go." "Good," the voice said. "Details will be sent to your school." "Congratulations, Malik. You've just been noticed." Click, the line went dead. His mother's reaction. Malik slowly turned to his mother. "They're sending me to the Pentagon." She blinked. "What?" they said. "Dad told them I'm ready?" Tears welled up in her eyes. She didn't speak. She just pulled him into a tight hug, so tight he could barely breathe. "I always knew," she whispered, "even when you didn't." That night Malik couldn't sleep. His body lay in bed, but his mind raced. The call echoed in his head over and over again. "This isn't a prank, son. Your father told us you may be ready. You've just been noticed." Midnight thoughts. The room was dark, but his eyes were wide open. He stared at the ceiling. For most of his life, people had laughed at him. "Your dad's not real. He left you. He's in prison." But now, he was being invited to the Pentagon, the real Pentagon, by real officers. Because of his dad, because of him, he looked over at the old notebook beside his bed. My truth. He'd written in it every day for years. And now his truth was opening a door few kids ever saw. The next morning, shock at school. When Malik arrived at school the next morning, everything felt strange. People didn't point or laugh like they used to. They looked at him with something else. Respect. Even the front desk secretary smiled at him differently. "Malik, dear Principal Hanley wants to see you." He blinked. "Okay." In the principal's office, Principal Hanley greeted him with a nod. "Have a seat, Malik." On his desk sat an official-looking envelope marked with a Pentagon seal. "This came for you this morning, hand-delivered. A military courier brought it." He pushed the envelope forward. "And Malik, I owe you an apology." Malik looked surprised. "Sir?" The principal folded his hands. "This school failed you. I failed you. No student should feel ignored or doubted because of their background, their silence, or the color of their skin. You showed strength I haven't seen in years. Malik looked down at the envelope in his lap. I didn't want to prove anything. I just wanted people to believe me. They do now, Mr. Hanley said quietly, opening the envelope later. Back in the classroom, Malik sat at his desk. The other kids kept glancing over, waiting to see what was inside. Ms. Sanders gave him a respectful nod and didn't ask questions. Slowly, Malik opened the envelope. Inside was a formal invitation. Malek Carter, you have been selected for a 3-day youth immersion visit to the Pentagon Intelligence Training Program. You will meet select officers, observe key operations, and receive mentorship from Defense Division leaders. Travel, housing, and security clearance will be arranged. Congratulations. Attached was a photo ID badge with his name printed across the bottom, and under it, guest of Colonel David Carter. The class reacts whispers spread instantly. He's going to the actual Pentagon. That's not just a trip, it's a program. Is that his name on the badge? One boy who used to mock him leaned over and whispered, I was wrong, Malik. I'm sorry. Malik didn't say anything. He just nodded. A small, quiet smile appeared on his face. Miss Sanders calls him forward. After lunch, Miss Sanders cleared her throat. Class, as many of you now know, Malik Carter has been invited to a federal-level youth program. We're going to give him the floor for 5 minutes to share anything he wants. Malik stood slowly at first. His hands shook, but as he walked to the front, something in him grew stronger. He turned to face the class, the same class that laughed at him just days ago. Malik speaks. Most of you didn't believe me. Some of you said my dad was fake, or that I made up stories. But the truth is, I never lied. He paused. I just stopped talking because it hurt to keep being ignored. But my dad always told me, the truth doesn't need shouting. It just needs time. He pulled the Pentagon letter from his backpack and held it up. This letter isn't just about me. It's about what happens when you don't give up, even when everyone laughs at you. The room was still. Malik nodded once, then returned. To his seat, a new view of Maliquin. He sat down. No one clapped. They didn't need to. The silence said more than any applause could. For the first time, Malik Carter wasn't just a kid with stories. He was a kid with proof, with purpose, and with a future. 2 days later, Malik sat in his room packing a small bag. His mother had just received the travel details. He would leave Sunday morning for Washington, D.C. The school had arranged a private car to take him. To the airport, he had never even been on a plane before. As he folded his favorite hoodie into the bag, his hands stopped for a moment. Inside the front pocket of his notebook was still the letter from his dad, the one that started it all. He unfolded it slowly and reread the last line. Let them laugh now. A knock on the door, just as he placed the letter back inside. There was a knock at the apartment door. His mother answered. Malik heard voices, low and serious. Then his mother called out, Malik, someone's here to see you. He walked out. Of his room, slowly in the doorway, stood a man in a black coat. He wasn't smiling. He looked. Official, government-official. An unexpected visitor, your Malik Carter? The man asked. Yes. The man pulled out a badge, small, dark blue, with a golden eagle. Agent Harlan, Defense Intelligence Protocol. Malik blinked. Why are you here? Agent Harlan stepped forward. Before you enter the Pentagon program, there's one last thing we require. An interview. Malik looked confused. But I already got the letter. Yes. But clearance requires more than your father's name. We need to know who you are. The living room interview, they sat at the dining table. Malik's mom stood nearby. Silent Agent Harlan pulled out a folder. This won't take long. Just answer honestly. Malik nodded. First question, Harlan began. Have you ever felt the need to lie, just to be believed? Malik hesitated. Yes, but I never did. I just stopped talking. The agent nodded. Do you know what your father does at the Pentagon? Not everything, Malik replied. He said some of it's too dangerous to share. Smart answer, Harlan said, almost smiling. The final question, then the agent leaned forward. Last question, and it's the most important. Malik sat still. Why do you want to go to the Pentagon? Malik thought deeply, then said, because I want to know what truth looks like behind locked doors. I want people like me to stop being treated like shadows. Agent Harlan stared at him for a moment, then closed the folder. That's the right answer. The card he reached into his coat and handed Malik a black security card with gold print. Guest clearance, temporary access Pentagon. Youth Intelligence Division. Malik's hands shook as he held it. You're in, son, Agent Harlan said. You don't just carry your father's name, you carry his strength. Later that night, Malik lay in bed again. But this time, his mind wasn't racing with fear. It was filled with possibility. He had made it. Not because of a story, not because of a lie, but because the truth had finally been loud enough. Sunday morning arrived quietly. The streets were still asleep when the black government SUV pulled up in front of Malik's building. He stepped out of the apartment wearing clean jeans, his best sneakers, and a jacket too big for him, but he walked with a quiet confidence. Around his neck was the black Pentagon guest badge. His mother stood in the doorway holding back tears. You sure you're ready, baby? Malik nodded once. I'm not afraid anymore. She hugged him tightly. No. You don't need to prove anything to anyone, she whispered. I'm not, he said. I'm just going to learn. The ride to the airport. The SUV was quiet. A uniformed escort sat beside him, but didn't say much, just offered him water and a file. Inside the file were Pentagon security rules, a schedule, and one unexpected item, a small handwritten note on yellow paper. It read, proud of you. Watch, listen, learn, Dad.
Alex smiled to himself.
He tucked the note inside his jacket pocket next to the original letter. Arrival at the Pentagon. Plane ride felt like a blur. Washington, D.C. was bigger, colder, and busier than anything he'd ever seen, but nothing compared to what he saw. Next, the Pentagon. Massive, gray, guarded, people in suits, people in uniforms. People who looked like they hadn't slept in days. But somehow, Malik felt calm. This wasn't a dream anymore. This was real. Inside the security checkpoint, Taz Malik entered through the main gate. His badge was scanned 3 times. Each time, the guard looked up at him carefully. Then finally, one of them smiled and said, Welcome to the Pentagon, Malik Carter. His chest lifted just a bit. Thank you. Meeting the team, he was led down long white hallways with cameras on every corner. Then, entered a small room with 4 other kids about his age. They were quiet, nervous. One girl whispered, Are you Colonel Carter's son? Politely. That's what they say, another boy added. They say he once stopped a cyber-attic before it reached the president. Malik said nothing. He just smiled, because he didn't need to say anything anymore. A man in black enters the door. Opened. In walked a tall man in a black suit with a Pentagon badge and an earpiece. Welcome to the Youth Intelligence Program. You've been chosen. Not because of your parents, not because of your grades, but because someone saw in you the ability to understand truth and protect it. He paused, then looked directly at Malik. One of you may be called again in the future. And when that time comes, it won't be for learning. It'll be for leading. Malik's thoughts as the group followed the man deeper into the Pentagon. Malik's heart beat. Faster, not with fear, but with purpose. He wasn't the kid with the torn backpack anymore. He wasn't the boy who got laughed at in class. He was Malik Carter, son of Colonel Carter, and now, student inside the most powerful building in America. Malik stood at the large window of the Pentagon training room, looking out over the city, Washington. D.C. Everything below him seemed smaller, now tiny cars, tiny buildings, tiny problems behind him. His group of student trainees followed a mentor into another room. But Malik stayed for a moment. He needed this, a moment to remember where he came from. His father appears then. From the hallway came the sound of familiar footsteps. Slow, steady, strong. Malik turned and there he was. Colonel David Carter. His father, wearing the same sharp uniform, medals glinting under the lights. But this time, He wasn't here to prove anything. He was just proud. I heard about your interview, he said with a small smile. They told me your answers were better than most adult agents. Malik laughed quietly. I didn't try to sound smart. I just told the truth. Colonel Carter nodded. That's why you belong here.
Oh.
The last lesson they walked side down a quiet hallway, father and son. Then the colonel stopped. He looked Malik in the eyes. You were never meant to fit into small boxes, son. You were meant to lead, not with your mouth. With your mind, with your patience, with your story. Malik looked down. They never believed me before. His dad raised his chin gently. They believe now. Back at the school weeks later, Malik returned home 3 days later. When he walked into room 6B again, it was like the world had flipped. Kids rushed over to him with questions. What did it look like? Did you see any spy stuff? Did anyone salute you? Malik laughed. Hey, they don't salute kids, he said. But I saw a world most people never do. Miss Sanders approached, hands behind her back. Welcome back, Malik. We missed you. He nodded. Thank you. B didn't smile with pride. He smiled with peace, because he finally understood. He never needed the world's approval. He just needed to know who he was. Final voiceover camera. Fade out style, they laughed at him. They called him a liar, but all he did was speak the truth. Now, the same people who laughed remember his name, because some stories aren't made up. They're just ahead of their time.